Okay, you can start now.
Good evening. The July 17th, 2021 meeting of the Evanston City Council shall come to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rebel. Here. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Nguyen.
Here.
Councilmember Newsoma.
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Sufferton.
Here. Seven members present. We have a quorum and are prepared to do business. The first item on our agenda is public comment. We have several people who have registered to give public comment through Zoom and several who are here in person. So we'll begin with the in-person public commenters, beginning with Mr. Beth Johnson.
There, the matter of the allegations are pretty disturbing. My friend Kevin Brown was fired as city manager for traffic. Post violation. Couple matters very quickly.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Carrie Breitel.
Thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I wasn't planning to speak, so it's going to be a little bit off the cuff, but I wanted to share my experience. My daughter is a third-year lifeguard at the beach. She's actually working. She's right now on shift. And she knows I was coming tonight to listen. She's very interested, glad that this council is taking. She did sign a petition this summer. But I would say that even she didn't know the full scope of what was reported today. Very large here that I think some of the conduct that was reported was for several years before she joined the lifeguard staff. But it was not at all surprising to her to hear it, given some of the conduct that she witnessed. And I do want to say that there are working at the beach, boys and who are very, but there's some bad apples there that really have to target young girls, very young girls, 15, 16 girls, for unwelcome attention at best. And obviously there's some allegations that have been serious as well. I did want to share, I sent a note to that last summer because some of the hiring and scheduling practices at the beach, I think, are also discriminatory on the basis of sex. And I wanted to just read it to the council. I don't know that my note really got very far. I had a nice, respectful conversation with Reed Dorner last summer about it. But I don't know that any action was taken because my understanding is that the practices of scheduling are still the same. They involve a lot of physical tests, carrying of heavy dummies, sprinting, swimming, and things like that. Some of which is related to the skills you need as a lifeguard. Some of which seems to be just pure physical tests that naturally boys over girls because it requires great physical strength. And what they do is they rank the lifeguards into these tests. And then they give the most highly ranked lifeguards preference in choosing schedules. And so as a result, the statistics show, with the statistics that I shared last year, showed that there's a significant benefit to the boys and a significant disparate impact to the girls. So I just want to read into the record, if I may, the information shared last summer, so that you all have the benefit of it. Skip pleasantries. As I understand it, schedules are assigned based on the results of various physical tests, including how quickly the lifeguard completes a swim while carrying a 100-pound dummy. The scheduling practice does not take into account experience, performance, knowledge of first aid, or any of the many other skills and factors that go into making you qualified as a successful lifeguard. By using this practice, the fastest, strongest lifeguards get first choice of schedules, while those who complete the physical tests successfully but somewhat more slowly, although still within the requirements to qualify as a lifeguard for the city, often are not assigned a schedule at all, but can only serve as subs who pick up shifts when the regularly assigned lifeguards are available. As a result, there are instances of rookie, that is, experienced lifeguards receiving a preference over experienced qualified lifeguards based solely on their physical strength. The unfortunate result of this facially neutral practice, of course, is that boys who are in general physically stronger than girls are given first choice of schedules, while qualified female lifeguards are relegated to the status of subs. Male rookies have been given full-time schedules, whereas experienced qualified females have not received schedules at all. The data is quite striking. Last summer, in summer of 2020, there were 50 qualified lifeguards hired by the city of Evanston. Of this group, 28 or 56% were boys, 22 or 44% were girls. The entire group, regardless of gender, had passed the demanding battery of tests to qualify as lifeguards for the city. Both physical tests to ensure they had the skills to rescue and aid swimmers, and written and practical tests to ensure that safety. That only 33 lifeguards were assigned regular schedules at the beaches. Of this group offered regular employment, 23 or 70% were boys, and 10 or 30% were girls. In contrast, the cohort of subs was 5 boys, 30%, and 12 girls, 70%. Overall, less than half the qualified female lifeguards were offered regular schedules, whereas 82% of the male lifeguards were offered schedules. Even rookie male lifeguards, who arguably were less qualified because of their lack of experience, were offered full-time schedules over more experience. I just want to say, in conclusion, I think the scheduling practices were similar this summer. They may have been tweaked a little bit to favor certain elements over others, but my daughter, who is a third-year experienced lifeguard, was not given a schedule initially. Greenwood Beach was open. She was offered a schedule at that time, but she was not among the first group of lifeguards offered schedules. So I think the problem persists, and I think it's part of the culture that is favoring boys and men and giving them the ability to do things that none of us want to see. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Suffolk.
Thank you. Just a question. This is not being recorded or broadcast. Is that correct?
It's being recorded but not broadcast.
Okay. I've gotten questions from people who are tuned into the Channel 16 and this is not on.
No, we don't have the capacity currently to broadcast live. It's being recorded, and my understanding is we will have the ability to make the recording publicly available on the city, I believe on the city's YouTube channel.
Okay.
Is that
Correct?
correct?
Yes, and I'll move my camera on that side if the council wants one before we
No, I
close.
just wanted to, everyone's asking me. Just don't know the answer. Thank you, sir.
And before I go on with the clerk, please add Councilmember Braithwaite to the roll. The next speaker is Dick Alfonda.
Alfonda, second one. Thank you for holding this special meeting. I heard the WBEZ broadcast yesterday morning in class as I was leaving the beach, actually, right observed this for many of these young women. And I was completely disturbed by it. So I'm so grateful that you're here to talk about this tonight. I know all of you. Some of you probably don't know that I'm one of the founding mothers of the All-Night Coalition on Sexual Assault, which was founded in 1983. We fund 52 rape crisis centers around the state. I also ran a rape crisis center in Chicago for the 80s. My clinical practice at this point in my life is with many women and men who had sexual trauma or harassment in their life. They didn't get to talk about it as young women. They come to see me now in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So when I heard the story about how this was not handled, in my opinion, properly, with the due respect and justice that I think needed to happen with these young women, I was deeply disturbed because more needs to be done. At this point, I really urge you to do some really deep searching about what appears to me to be a culture of tolerance of this kind of behavior in a time of Me Too. We've all been through the Me Too movement in the last 10 years, and to me it was shocking to hear this story on the radio as I was driving home about Evanston for 5 minutes that this was happening here. So really, I just hope you dig deeply and look beyond. I hope that these young women can find some justice here in the city because they've come to you and they need that because I don't want to see them in my practice 10, 15, 20 years from now.
That concludes the in-person public commenters. There are several people who signed up to give remote public comment. The first remote public comment will be from Julie Burkett.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where the link is. Are people able to join by Zoom? Because if so, it's not available.
So the link is never available via Zoom unless they sign up for public comment, then the link is sent to them. Anyone who signed up for public comment has been sent a link to join via Google Hangouts. It's the only live broadcast that we do is through Channel 16 or YouTube, but we don't have those two at the moment.
Walter. Is Julie Burkett in the Zoom?
She's not here.
She seems not to be here yet. Next is Christine Leone.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, buenas noches. Thank you, Clerk Mendoza, for facilitating public comment. I'm just going to read a statement. My name is Christine Leone. My pronouns are ella, she, and her. I'm half Ecuadorian, half white, and an unmarried mother to a 6-year-old, and I live in the 8th Ward. I'm also a social worker and therapist, and I work with survivors of intimate partner violence, institutional violence, and sexualized violence. I've never given public comment before, but I couldn't stay silent when I heard that the city called an emergency meeting tonight in regards to the reports of systematic sexualized violence in the Parks and Rec Department. First, I want to say me too. I'm also a survivor. And I'm wondering why everyone seems so shocked that these reports came to light. I would like to bring everyone's attention back to the evening of November 18th, 2019, when a young Black woman by the name of Portia Davis, who came out in support of Kevin Brown when his termination was going on, she addressed the Evanston City Council and she spoke her truth. I saw some of you sitting there and listening, including the city manager. She told you what was going on and she named names and nothing was done. So now is the time to believe her and take serious action, because where there is smoke, there is always fire. And this is not an example of a few bad apples. This is an example of the organizational culture that exists in the city of Evanston, and it starts at the top. The time is up on turning a blind eye to the institutional racism and misogyny in the city, because you cannot stop the truth from coming to light, as we see here today. Thank you very much for your time.
Your comments. The next speaker is Carlos Sutton.
You're on mute.
Good evening. Yeah, I tried to get a copy of the agenda and I could not get it off of the internet. So my comments are probably not in accordance with some of the previous testimony. However, I want to agree with any form of discrimination that is practiced by the city should be excised and eliminated upon any person, regardless of sex and discrimination. So after saying that, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I want to thank Clerk Mendoza for implementing this meeting. But my concerns right now are with the approach that the city is taking to approving the TIF in the Fifth Ward. To begin with, I want to also thank Alderman Cicely Fleming for her concern about the identification of the TIF in the Fifth Ward as being one racially discriminatory and insensitive to the Black residents of Evanston. And I thank her for having that kind of concern about citizens of the Fifth Ward. I also want to agree with Mike Vasilko about having meetings scheduled where there could be more citizen participation than less, and also an opportunity to discuss what the citizens seems is a conflict of their concerns with the practices of the city. We've gone through several changes in the Fifth Ward. Many, unfortunately, have not been to the benefit of the residents of the Fifth Ward. That's why at this time, I think I need to bring to your attention that our concerns, needs, and requirements should not only be addressed, but also should be given the proper place of discussion. I was encouraged that the recent election of the current council members would not continue the marginalization and ignoring the citizens' concerns, and there would be more transparency and more citizen participation. However, the optimism is fading fast. Practice is the main thing. To me, it seems like it's maintaining the status quo rather than opening up these kinds of meetings to more transparencies and effectively dealing with the concerns of the citizens. Many years ago, the West Side Plan was presented to the City Council. Our hopes for our ward were particular, and the city as well, for improvements regarding residents of the Fifth Ward and residents of Evanston. A proposal was adopted, shelved, and ignored. I'm asking this time that the citizens' concerns be the only item discussed for any further evidence of development of the Fifth Ward. Many years ago, we wrestled with the problems that this ward seems to be the ward that is ignored by all the other wards in the city. No school and no access to basic facilities as a bank or any other thing like that. The new election to the City Council had optimism that some of our concerns about marginalization, especially to residents of the Fifth Ward, would be considered. However, when I see the current discussion of the TIF, I realize that this is more of the status quo and not encouraging transparency or participation. Our experience with Brenshaw has led to gentrification of our community, and I think the city staff's proposal should be shelved and not further discussed. No more money should be given to any developers or people coming into our community telling us what members of the Fifth Ward want. We're quite able to express our own concerns and needs without the city paying tens of thousands of dollars to some developer who has no idea of who we are and what we want. Only our original proposal submitted by the West Side Plan should be the one considered and implemented. Nothing else is acceptable regarding the Fifth Ward. I hope my grandparents and my parents were wrong with their observation of Black residents in Evanston when they said, be careful of urban renewal, Carlos, because urban renewal is eventually Black removal. I hope this is not coming to fruition. These are my concerns, and I hope they will be listened to in a kind and sensitive manner by the people who are making choices on my life as a resident of the Fifth Ward without my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nick Davis.
How's everybody doing? Everybody can hear me okay?
Sure can.
Yes.
All right, cool. So I'm here to talk about the lifeguard allegations as well. So I was a lifeguard for 3 summers. The first time when I was 17, 2 years I was a lifeguard regular, and 1 year I was a manager at the beach. And so I just wanted to first say that, like, I'm not exactly sure who came forward, but whoever did, those girls and women I feel like are very courageous, and that needs to be taken into account however it's dealt with. I just wanted to confirm everything that I read in the report as far as things that I believe are definitely true, things that have happened, that the workplace culture that is there is definitely one. Like, being an adult now, I can see that there was not, and also being an educator and somebody that works with children, high school age children particularly, which is who's the main age group working at the beach, are between about 15 to 16 up to, like, early mid 20s. And there's definitely not enough, if at all, any type of conversation training around sexual assault, harassment in the workplace, what to do if that happens, what to do if it's somebody that's a higher up at the beach office, and where you can go outside of the beach office for that. And then to Ms. Leone's point, the head of Parks and Recs, Lawrence Hemingway, has his own allegations against him in that department. And so I think we just need to take into account all those things and, where girls and women are supposed to go when that's the culture that we've bred, not just at the beach, but in the city of Evanston, right? And that was years ago, right? So, and there's these people are still in these positions today. The current city manager who was, made aware of these things and then waited very long until the story came out to let other people know about it. She was here under Wally, who we know left under, settlements for racial discrimination allegations. And I just think that, like people are saying, these are things that we're seeing happen over and over again, happening for years. I said I started as a lifeguard when I was 17. I'm 25 now. So, that's 8 years, right? That these things have been happening where some of these same names and same people are coming up. And so I hope that the people who are in office right now can see that and make the proper determinations about what's going on. In addition to just the allegations, I just want to say specifically, for sure, I've definitely been in parties as a lifeguard when I was under the age of 21, when there were things that were present, like alcohol and drugs. And when people say drugs, I'm not sure who's read the report, but we're not just talking about people smoking weed and stuff like that. There's people, doing a lot harder drugs than that. And for people who are unfamiliar with, the population of lifeguards, it's gotten more diverse, especially since I was there. But the traditional group is white kids, North Evanston, that type of parents groups that have access to those types of things, and the types of parties that Evanston police are not coming to bust up or anything like that, and where these things are happening, without people watching, and without people being adults, right, and responsible people doing anything about it. And so as a kid, like I said, I started when I was 17. I'm just thinking this is just kind of how things work, kind of how parties go. The older people are the ones that, get us in the door, bring all the stuff. But as an adult now, I can see why that was wrong and see how that's not okay. There was also, going back to the training, not many conversations about people who are managers or supervisors or higher ups, not pursuing intimate or any type of relationship with people who are below them because of just the general inappropriateness of how that is and the power dynamics that are in place there. And, that kind of might seem obvious to us, but you got to remember, again, these are children. We're all kids when we start working here, most of the people. So there's nothing that can be broken down too simple for kids to understand it. And that's not what's happening. I think it should be happening going forward, especially in light of these things. And I think it's really terrible that these things had to happen for these changes to hopefully take place. But yeah, so those are the things I wanted to say. And now, again, just to the people that came forward, I think that that situation needs to be handled with as much care as possible. We know that in general, the criminal justice system is not set up for survivors of sexual assault and harassment. And, Evanston claims to want to be the most livable city. And that includes for the people who identify as girls and women here. So I'm hoping that we make this process, as it's going to be a painful one regardless for these people, but you can do a lot of things to make it less painful. You know, you can believe them. You cannot require people to have to go through their stories over and over and over again. We don't have to victim blame here. You know, again, Miss Leone was on the call. We've got a lot of people in Evanston. My father always talks about the human capital of Evanston. We've got a lot of qualified people to deal with the situation that we're in right now, so that these girls and women don't have to go through it in the most painful way possible. And so I'm hoping that we use all the resources that we have within the city, like within the city government, as well as just the people that live in Evanston who have just come forward and talked about wanting to help to make this like process go the way that it needs to go, so that like the proper justice and retribution can happen. But like, unfortunately, it doesn't look, that's like from the track record, that's not what it looks like it's going to happen, right? Like I said, like some of the same names that have come up before are still here, those same people. And so I'm just trying to point that out so that hopefully we understand what needs to be done and why this is a problem. And, you know, there's just a lot of things I think, you know, that happen, especially when children are the ones that are employees, and it's easy to brush kids off. It's easy to say, oh, they're young or they don't know any better. And we need to take these allegations like really seriously, because that's how we'd want it to be taken. You know, people always say, oh, if it was your mom or your sister, but like at the end of the day, these are people, and that's why we should care first and foremost. And not only these people, but lifeguards do a very tough job. You know, I'm not saying like we don't get paid well and it wasn't sweet in a lot of, you know, aspects, but everybody on this call is an adult. Imagine what is, you know, how you feel when a 16-year-old tells you to do something, right? Like, you're like, yo, what? And that's what we have to deal with every day as a lifeguard. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're dealing with the highest levels of disrespect and all that. And now you're hearing that these girls and women have to deal with all this harassment and assault on top of that. So I think that we need to just take all that into account and be very gracious and very merciful. And like, again, believing victims, believing survivors, and not having to drag their name through the mud, because this is when I joined the lifeguarding community, I didn't realize how, like, what it was. It's very tight knit. There's a lot of people who have known each other for their entire lives, their family, friends. Most of them are on the swim team together and stuff like that. So for these people to come forward, they're risking a lot that, you know, they're risking their social lives. They're risking a lot of their like connections with people, family, friends, like I said, even people that are within their families, maybe their brother, whoever's best friend. So like, we need to also take that into account and realize, again, this is not something that their people are doing for revenge. Like, people come forward, you know, we got a lot of people on the call who can attest to why things don't happen, you know, fast. Well, why didn't you come forward sooner? Like, there's any number of reasons. So I think we need to make sure that we're being as respectful and like diligent as possible when we're dealing with this, to make sure that this is not something that happens again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker. Okay.
I think she is. I saw her. Yeah, she's trying to unmute. Hi, Tina. We can't hear you.
Should we come back to her with a turn? All right. Tina, if you can hear me, we'll return to you. Hopefully you and Clerk Mendoza can resolve the technical issues. The next speaker is Gail Schechter.
Thank you. My name again is Gail Schechter. I'm representing Community Alliance for Better Government, and we have a formal statement. And I believe Ali Harned is here as well. There may be some others of us, but let me read our brief statement. Earlier this week, WBZ Investigations published an article describing numerous acts of sexual abuse and misconduct suffered by over 50 City of Evanston staff at Evanston's lakefront over a period of years, but which the city manager had not brought to public attention, nor even apparently to city council members. Community Alliance for Better Government demands that Evanston City Council immediately authorize an independent investigation of the appalling numerous and ongoing allegations of sexual abuse in the Parks and Recreation Division, and the silence at best of the city manager's office that allowed this to continue into the summer of 2021. We are furious on behalf of the women and anyone else affected, and we are frustrated that a culture of sexual harassment alleged for years by staff of Parks and Rec, led by Lawrence Hemingway, has failed to be curtailed by the Human Resources Director, Jennifer Lynn, and City Manager, Erica Storley. The self-defense outlined in their press statement is woefully insufficient. There is no such thing as employee, quote, empowerment and, quote, ongoing dialogue when acts of violence are involved. Clearly, employees are frightened and insulted. Allie or Oliver, do you want to read the next sentence of our statement?
The next speaker is Ellie.
Okay. I'll go ahead then. We demand that the immediate firing of those found responsible not only for perpetrating, but for abetting these crimes. Following this, the mayor and city council must address the toxic culture with an admixture of racism, sexism, and favoritism that has flourished without meaningful challenge at 2100 Ridge for years. The voices of these young women have been ignored, and CABG stands with them in solidarity. We believe them.
Ms. Harda, did you want to continue?
Nope, that was our statement. Just want to reiterate that we believe them.
Thank you. Let's see if Ms. Payton's audio issues are resolved. Ms. Payton?
She's in here, but we can't.
She's still muted, so let's go to the next speaker, Mary Rosinski. Is Mary Rosinski in the Zoom?
Tina just read all.
All right, I think maybe Ms. Payton has, her technology issues have been resolved. Ms. Payton?
You need to unmute yourself.
We're not able to unmute you from this end, I'm afraid. The other two people who we haven't been able to get back to are Julie Burkett and Mary Rosinski. Is either one of them in the Zoom right now? Okay, so we have another few moments for Ms. Payton to hold on one second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
And please put the volume down on your other devices so you don't.
No,
have
I turned it off. I tried like 300 times to get on here. So, hi, hopefully I will not get kicked off because I was kicked off several times already. Anyway, good evening. My name is Tina Payton. I feel that this meeting, as well as many other meetings, have no proper notice. And this appears to be a pattern for City Council. In the beginning, you couldn't hear or see the in-person speakers. And it was not on the city website or the city channel 16 for people to see. There should be a consistent notice by mail of meetings. Not everybody has computer access, Facebook, or any of the sorts. This meeting and other meetings need a proper notice, and there should be some kind of meeting about notice for meetings. It seems like you're keeping the residents in the dark. Where is the agenda items for the meeting? Also, why did you change to Google Meet instead of Zoom? Previous meetings had Google Meet, and they said that we will not use Google Meet anymore. And here today you are using Google Meet, and I tried 4 or 5 times to speak and got kicked off and so forth. So you're not being consistent of how you're trying to be transparent and accessible to the public. Also, I would like to talk about cutting time to speak at meetings. I was at Plan Commission meeting the other night where we're supposed to be able to allow to ask many questions to the proposal before us, such as a building being built or whatever's on the agenda before it goes to council. Many of the other council members said, go to the committee and you can speak as much as you want. I was just told that now they have changed the rules at Plan Commission that you're only allowed 2 minutes to speak, which is inappropriate to ask questions to a developer or anyone else that has presentation in front of them. I hope that the city will have more public meetings about harassment. I hope that the city will stop harassing my family and other Black residents trying to make them move away from Evanston. My family has been harassed for over 30 years by the city of Evanston. And we hope that this will too need a meeting. Also, we need help for small minority landlords that continue to take low-income tenants even when we don't get paid during this pandemic. I also agree with Carla Sutton not to pass TIF in the 5th Ward. That is more gentrification and a way to remove minority and low income from the area. Pretending that Black Lives Matter. This is just a sign on people's lawn. Let's see action if you really care about Black Lives Mattering and not just a sign on the lawn. Black Lives Matter all the time, not just sometime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The final speaker will be Doreen Price.
I don't see her here.
Doreen Price just signed up, but seems not to be in the Google Meet. Are you in there? Apparently not. So that concludes our public comment. And with that, I would entertain a motion from the council.
I move that we go into executive session pursuant with the Open Meetings Act to discuss issues regarding personnel and digital litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves to go into executive session pursuant to Illinois statute to discuss matters of personnel and potential litigation. Councilmember Fleming seconds. Councilmember Suffolk.
Sure, I have it, if I may. I was just going to say what I believe Councilmember Reed intended to say was pursuant to 5 Illinois Compiled Statutes ILCS 2A, I move that the city council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel. This agenda item is permitted subject to be considered in executive session and is an enumerated exception under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2C and are set forth as follows. Exceptions: a public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects: personnel.
I accept that amendment.
So Council Member Reed withdraws his motion. Councilmember Sutherland makes a similar motion. As that motion, will the clerk call the roll, please?
Councilmember Ravel. Aye. Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton.
Aye. On a vote of 9 to 0, the motion passes and will the executive session will begin.
Council members, I will send an updated link shortly for you to join executive session.
We should hang up on this one.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Clerk Mendoza.